There was a moment late in the second set when center court became unusually quiet. Not because Novak Djokovic had fallen behind, because something felt unfamiliar. The scoreboard read 4 games all. Wu Yibing was serving with growing confidence. And for the first time that afternoon, the 7-time Wimbledon champion didn't look like a man controlling an opening round match. He looked like a man trying to stop one from getting away. That feeling only grew stronger a few minutes later. Wu claimed the second set 7-5, leveling the match. Suddenly, what had been expected to be a routine Wimbledon opener had become something else entirely. A fight. Not just for the next point, for control itself. Because against Novak Djokovic, matches usually become more predictable as they go on. This one kept becoming less predictable, and that's what made it dangerous. When the draw was announced, almost nobody circled this match as a potential problem. Why would they? Djokovic has built one of the greatest records Wimbledon has ever seen. Opening rounds have rarely been obstacles. More often, they're the beginning of another championship campaign. His opponents usually arrive believing they need to play perfect tennis. Then reality sets in. Djokovic extends rallies. He absorbs pressure. He quietly removes their favorite patterns until confidence begins to disappear. It's happened so many times that it almost feels inevitable. Wu Yibing never accepted that script. From the opening games, he played as though history didn't exist. He wasn't intimidated by center court. He wasn't waiting for Djokovic to make mistakes. And perhaps, most importantly, he wasn't trying to survive. He was trying to dictate. That's an enormous difference. Djokovic still found a way to take the opening set, 6-4. On paper, it looked exactly as everyone expected. The favorite was ahead, business, as usual. But the score hid something important. Djokovic had won the set. He hadn't controlled it. Those aren't the same thing. Almost every comfortable Djokovic victory follows a familiar rhythm. The rallies become slightly longer. The opponent begins taking fewer risks. The court slowly starts feeling smaller. Little by little, Djokovic turns uncertainty into routine. None of that was happening. Wu kept stepping inside the baseline. He attacked second serves without hesitation. He flattened out his backhand whenever he saw an opening. Even after missing aggressive shots, he kept making the same decisions. That takes unusual conviction. Against most players, aggression eventually forces errors. Against Djokovic, it often forces doubt. Wu refused to let doubt enter the equation. The first person to recognize the shift wasn't the crowd. It was Djokovic, not through emotion. Through adjustments, his serve locations became less predictable. He looked for more body serves instead of relying on familiar wide patterns. On return games, he changed his court positioning by just enough to disrupt Wu's timing. Tiny changes, barely noticeable unless you're looking for them. But champions rarely adjust this early unless they're being pushed. Wu wasn't overwhelming Djokovic with power. He was denying him comfort. And comfort has always been one of Djokovic's greatest weapons. Not because he needs easy matches, because he makes difficult matches feel ordinary. This one refused to cooperate. The longer the points became, the more interesting the battle looked. It wasn't forehand against backhand. It wasn't youth against experience. It was commitment against calculation. Wu committed fully to every aggressive pattern. Djokovic calculated every response. Neither approach was obviously winning. That's what made center court begin to change. Early in the afternoon, the applause celebrated great tennis. Now, the crowd was reacting to tension. Every deuce mattered a little more. Every hold felt a little heavier. Every service game carried a question no one expected to ask this early in the tournament. Could Wu actually keep this level long enough to turn pressure into belief? Because belief changes everything. The first fearless winner surprises you. The 10th fearless winner changes the match. When Wu walked away with the second set, 7-5, it wasn't simply because he had played brilliant tennis. It was because he had protected his identity. He never allowed Djokovic to convince him to play safer. That may sound simple, Against Novak Djokovic at Wimbledon, it's one of the hardest things in professional tennis. Most opponents don't lose to Djokovic because they lack talent. They lose because somewhere along the way, they stop playing their own match. Wu never stopped. And that created a problem Djokovic rarely faces in the opening round. For the first time that afternoon, experience alone wasn't enough. The patterns that had carried him through countless Wimbledon victories weren't producing the same control. Every answer seemed to create another question. Every adjustment solved one problem, only for Wu to present another. And as the players walked to their chairs with the match tied at 1-all, one thought quietly settled over center court. This was no longer about whether Novak Djokovic would win. It was about whether he could take the match back, before Wu Yibing stopped believing altogether. When the players returned for the third set, the score was exactly where Wu Yibing wanted it, 1-all. For most players, taking a set off Novak Djokovic at Wimbledon feels like an achievement. For Wu, it felt like permission. Permission to believe he could actually finish the job. That's a dangerous place for any favorite to be, because tennis changes the moment an underdog stops hoping and starts expecting. Djokovic understood the danger immediately. There was no frustration, no panic, no desperate attempt to produce highlight reel winners. Instead, he made a decision that would quietly change the rest of the afternoon. He stopped trying to win the match. He started trying to win back the rhythm. There's a difference. One is about points. The other is about ownership. For nearly 2 sets, too many rallies had begun on Wu's terms. Too many second serves had allowed Wu to step inside the baseline. Too many neutral balls had turned into immediate attacks. Djokovic didn't need spectacular tennis. He needed Wu to play one extra shot, then another, then one more. That's when the match began changing in ways the scoreboard couldn't immediately show. Djokovic became far more selective with his serving patterns. Instead of searching for outright damage, he searched for weaker first contacts, a body serve instead of a risky wide serve, a safer target that prevented Wu from taking such an aggressive first swing. It wasn't flashy, it was deliberate. On return games, Djokovic also resisted the temptation to attack too early. Against an opponent striking the ball as cleanly as Wu was, forcing offense too soon only created openings. So he waited. He built points. He accepted longer exchanges, not because he wanted longer rallies, because longer rallies slowly favored his decision-making. That had always been one of Djokovic's greatest strengths. He doesn't rush opponents. He quietly asks them to make one more difficult choice, then another. Eventually, one of those choices becomes the wrong one. Wu kept fighting it. He continued stepping into the court. He continued driving the ball flat through both sides. Even after losing difficult rallies, he refused to retreat behind the baseline. It was brave. It was disciplined. And for long stretches, it worked. That's what made this battle so compelling. Neither player abandoned their identity. They simply refined it. Wu looked for earlier contact. Djokovic looked for deeper control. Wu searched for first strike tennis. Djokovic searched for second and third decisions. Two completely different philosophies, colliding on the same patch of grass. The third set stayed exactly where Djokovic didn't want it. Close. Every hold mattered. Every missed first serve suddenly carried weight. Every game felt capable of changing the direction of the afternoon. This wasn't pressure created by the scoreboard. It was pressure created by uncertainty. Djokovic has played hundreds of Grand Slam matches. Very few opponents have managed to keep him uncertain for this long in the opening round. Wu had, and the longer that uncertainty lasted, the more impressive his performance became. Then came one of the quiet turning points of the match. Not a miraculous winner, not an impossible passing shot, just a subtle change in who was making the last difficult decision. Earlier, Wu had been dictating the first attack. Now, Djokovic was forcing him to create one more. One extra rally ball. One extra change of direction. One extra shot under pressure. That single adjustment didn't immediately produce a break. It produced hesitation, only a fraction of a second. But at this level, a fraction is enough. A forehand lands a little shorter. A return misses by inches instead of clipping the line. A serve finds the middle instead of the corner. Championship tennis often turns on margins too small for casual fans to notice. Djokovic has spent his entire career living inside those margins. Eventually, the pressure finally changed sides. Djokovic captured the third set, 6-4. The scoreboard suggested he had restored order. It wasn't that simple. Wu hadn't disappeared. He hadn't collapsed. He hadn't suddenly become overwhelmed by the occasion. Djokovic had simply reduced the number of opportunities Wu received to play fearless tennis. That sounds like a small adjustment. It wasn't. Against aggressive players, removing even 2 or 3 attacking chances each service game can slowly change an entire match. That's exactly what happened. Still, there was no feeling that the contest was over. If anything, the fourth set carried a different kind of tension. Djokovic was ahead, but everyone inside center court understood something important. The hardest part wasn't earning the lead. It was protecting it. Because Wu had already proven he wasn't interested in respectable losses. He had already taken a set, already forced the favorite into nearly 3 hours of relentless problem-solving, already shown that this wasn't another routine Wimbledon opener. Now there was only one question left. Could Djokovic finish the job before Wu found one final serve? Or had surviving the first 3 sets already cost the champion more than anyone realized? When the fourth set began, the match had already outgrown its reputation. This was never supposed to become a 4-hour examination. Djokovic had entered center court expected to establish authority. Instead, he had spent most of the afternoon defending it. The scoreboard now favored him by 2-1, but the pressure hadn't disappeared. It had simply changed direction. Now the burden belonged to Djokovic. Because protecting a lead against a fearless opponent can be harder than chasing one. Wu Yibing had nothing left to protect. He had already changed the conversation. Nobody would leave center court, remembering him as another first-round opponent. He had proven he could trade with one of the greatest grass court players in history. More importantly, he still believed he could win. That belief showed in every return game. He continued stepping inside the baseline on second serves. He continued taking the ball early. He continued refusing the passive exchanges that Djokovic usually invites from opponents, protecting hope instead of chasing victory. Wu wasn't protecting the match. He was still trying to take it. And that's exactly what forced Djokovic to stay fully engaged until the very last game. Championship experience is often misunderstood. People imagine it as confidence, or composure, or simply knowing what to do. In reality, experience is recognizing when your instincts need to change. Djokovic understood something during the third set that shaped everything afterward. He didn't need to play better than Wu. He needed to make Wu play one level worse, not through intimidation, not through spectacular winners, through repetition, every deep return. Every heavy cross-court exchange, every extra rally ball, each one quietly asked the same question. Can you keep playing this aggressively for 1 more hour? That's a different kind of pressure. It isn't physical, it's psychological. Because aggressive tennis demands certainty. The smallest hesitation changes everything, slowly, almost invisibly. Those tiny hesitations began appearing. A return arrived a fraction late. A forehand landed just short enough for Djokovic to take control. A second serve wasn't attacked with quite the same conviction. None of those moments became highlights. Together, they became the match. That's one of the strangest truths about elite tennis. The biggest victories are rarely decided by the biggest points. They're decided by dozens of ordinary ones, points that slowly move belief from one side of the net to the other. Djokovic has built an extraordinary career winning exactly those points, not because they're spectacular, because they're available. Again and again. until the opponent finally runs out of perfect decisions. Wu never stopped competing. Even late in the fourth set, he continued forcing Djokovic to earn every hold. There was no collapse, no emotional unraveling, no ending that made the afternoon feel inevitable. When Djokovic finally closed the match 6-4, completing a 6-4, 5-7, 6-4, 6-4 victory, the scoreboard told the truth, but not the whole truth. It recorded another opening round win. It couldn't record how many adjustments it required. It couldn't measure how many familiar patterns Djokovic had been forced to abandon. And it certainly couldn't show how close this match came to becoming something entirely different. Afterward, Djokovic admitted it had been a much tougher opening round test than he expected. He praised Wu's level and acknowledged how difficult it was to establish control throughout the afternoon. Those comments mattered, because champions rarely compliment opponents simply to be polite. They recognize quality when they've had to solve it themselves. And Djokovic had spent nearly 4 hours doing exactly that. For Wu Yibing, the result ended his Wimbledon. The performance may have started something much bigger. He walked onto center court against a player who has defined this tournament for more than a decade. He refused to shrink. He refused to abandon his identity. And for long stretches, he forced Novak Djokovic to play someone else's match. There aren't many players in the world who can honestly say that. For Djokovic, this victory carried a lesson hidden beneath the scoreline. Easy wins can build momentum. Difficult wins build awareness. This match reminded him that reputation doesn't shorten rallies. History doesn't win service games. And previous Wimbledon titles don't solve today's problems. Every championship begins at 0. Every opponent asks different questions. Against Wu Yibing, those questions arrived much earlier than expected. Djokovic found the answers, not because he was untouchable, because he kept adapting long after comfort had disappeared. Maybe that's why the word survive fits this match better than dominate. Domination suggests control from beginning to end. Survival suggests uncertainty, adjustment, persistence, the willingness to keep searching when the first solution no longer works. That's what unfolded on center court. Not a flawless performance, a resilient one. And sometimes, those victories reveal more about a champion than the effortless ones ever could. Because long after the statistics fade, this opening round will be remembered for something the scoreboard could never fully explain. Novak Djokovic didn't begin his Wimbledon campaign by proving he was unbeatable. He began it by reminding everyone why beating him remains one of the hardest tasks in tennis. Not because he never loses control, but because when control slips away, he almost always finds a way to take it back.